Hello, this is topic 4. We are looking at the decline in Anglo-Spanish relations from 1569 to 1584. If you have arrived here after watching topic 3, you may recognise this slide here and the following 3 slides too. So as this section is about the decline in Anglo-Spanish relations, we do need to consider the revolt of the Northern Earls. Now, I'm not going to go through the details of this story again. If you need that, can you please go to topic 3 in Elizabeth and everything will be explained. But here I will just reiterate why this is left in here. So we know the revolt of the Northern Earls was very much the first big Catholic rebellion at home, and it was supported by the Spanish. So we just need to understand that this is going to cause tension between England and Spain because Elizabeth is aware that Spain were offering support in this rebellion. Further, I will just leave the 3 plots here, just as a reminder to you that all of these plots involve the Spanish in some way, whether it be the Duke of Alba leading an army or if it is Philip perhaps providing monetary or military support to an invasion. I'll just leave this one here for you too, followed by our Babington plot as well, and by the time this one takes place, things between England and Spain have completely fallen to pieces. You will also recognise the "Why is Mary Queen of Scots executed" slide, and again this is another thing that causes tension with Spain because Mary Queen of Scots was a Catholic. She has been murdered via execution by Elizabeth, and this is the dispatch of a anointed monarch here. So this is going to cause some upset to Philip because Mary Queen of Scots was Catholic and Elizabeth has directly attacked her. Next, we are going to look at the decline of Anglo-Spanish relations after the revolt of the Northern Earls and all of the plots. So we're going to start with Elizabeth's relationship with France. Now remember, she really banked on France and Spain being enemies because it was good for her. It meant that they were distracted by each other. Remember, she also has lots of pressure from Parliament because she is unmarried. She has no alliance on the continent via marriage. So it's good for her to have this friendly relationship, and she does so with a man called the French Duke of Alencon. Now, the French Duke and Elizabeth did discuss marriage, not for romantic reasons, just purely for an alliance, but they decided against that. Still, Philip hears about this and this makes him slightly worried about an alliance. Elizabeth, remember at this time, does not want to directly get involved in any conflict with Spain in the Netherlands. She recognises Philip II's claim to the Netherlands. She just wishes that he would leave and allow the Netherlands to govern themselves as they had previously been doing. So, she doesn't want to get sucked into a direct fight. Wars are expensive. She doesn't have a close by alliance. So instead she uses other methods such as indirect fighting. She pays the French Duke £70,000 to support them in fighting the Spanish in the Netherlands. This does not work. It fails. The next person we're going to talk about is Drake then. So how does Drake contribute towards sour Spanish relations? Well, he's hired as a privateer, which is a type of pirate, and you have permission to plunder and steal from the monarch. He steals £40,000 of Spanish silver, plundering Spanish ships in Panama, in the Americas, and publicly she condemns his actions, but privately she congratulates Drake. The reason that she publicly condemns him is because she doesn't want Philip to think that she is encouraging this type of behaviour, which he very much is. Next, Drake in 1577 achieves something that really boosts English morale. So he circumnavigates the globe. He doesn't set out to do this. He's instructed to disrupt any trade routes of the Spanish and to plunder as much as he can to stop them earning money to pay their army in the Netherlands. Elizabeth thinks if he can do this, that the Spanish will get their army to leave the Netherlands and she can feel less vulnerable again. So he leaves for the New World. He's going to try and build some trade routes along the way. He attacks some Spanish colonies and he manages to return home with £400,000. This is excellent in contributing towards clearing some of Elizabeth's debt here, as well as making himself very rich. Meanwhile, he also claims New Albion, which I believe is somewhere near San Francisco today. He claims it for England. There are, of course, already some native peoples living there. Nonetheless, he returns home with lots of money, with a small colony for Elizabeth, and she is so pleased with him that shortly afterwards he's knighted on the deck of the Golden Hind. Now, by this time, Philip's going to hear about this and he's going to be quite cross that she is publicly congratulating and even celebrating Drake for his actions. Now, the circumnavigation was really significant because it showed that the English would not accept Spanish domination of the Americas. If you remember, the Pope had said that Spain basically had the right to go and access all of that land, and it showed that we were a seafaring nation, someone to contend with. It also boosts Elizabeth's crown finances, and it's a strong message of defiance to Spain when she publicly knights Drake. Next then, we have more indirect involvement in the Netherlands. So after the Dutch rebels are involved with the Spanish Fury, Elizabeth sends £100,000 to Dutch rebels after the Spanish Fury. The Spanish Fury is where the Spanish soldiers in the Netherlands have not been paid. Why have they not been paid? Well, their trade is being disrupted and there's a certain somebody plundering all of their ships. And it means that some of that money is not going to pay the soldiers. The soldiers retaliate by starting to sack some of these cities in the Netherlands, which causes the Dutch rebels to unite against the Spanish. So Elizabeth sends £100,000 to help the rebels, and she promises she'll send an armed force at a later date. But you must note she's still not directly getting involved. She's not quite sent her own military there yet. By 1578, Philip has sent a stronger army back to the Netherlands after temporarily removing them. Elizabeth still doesn't want to directly commit to any action in Spain, in the Netherlands, and this really annoys her parliament because they want her to simply make a decision, but she doesn't want to rush into it. So she pays a mercenary known as John Casimir to go and fight on behalf of England, but not under the banner of Elizabeth, and he's going to have 6,000 English volunteer soldiers with him. Unfortunately, Casimir leads his own kind of John Casimir has his own agenda. That's the word I'm looking for there. So he has his own agenda when he's there, and him and his men devastate the Catholic churches as they are fighting on behalf of Elizabeth. And as you know, Elizabeth absolutely would not like this because she's a moderate Protestant anyway, and her hatred isn't really towards the Catholics at all, so that's definitely not something that she would have sanctioned. This damages English relations with the Dutch because the Dutch see their churches being smashed by the English, and this pushes them to then make peace with Spain, as Elizabeth hasn't really fully committed here and they aren't really truly helping the cause. So they make that peace with Spain. Elizabeth is hesitating here in terms of direct involvement. She's very pressured by her Privy Councillors and her Parliament to commit to a full-scale invasion, and she just will not do it at this point, which leads to the Privy Council becoming very frustrated with her. Finally, we have the start of our turning point here. In 1584, the Duke of Alencon dies. Remember, this is Elizabeth's French ally. Also, William of Orange is assassinated, and he is the leader of the Dutch Protestants, and he's kind of the poster boy of European Protestants. He's almost like the leader of all the European Protestants. So this causes Elizabeth some trouble, which I'll get to in just a second. This leads to the Treaty of Joinville, where the Catholic League in France, who are the next kind of power in France, and Philip, they decide to sign a treaty, they form an alliance against Protestantism. So it's Elizabeth's worst nightmare. France and Spain agreeing peace and unity between Catholics across France and Spain versus the rest of European Protestantism. The reason this is a problem for Elizabeth is she doesn't, because William of Orange has died, she doesn't want to be the new target of the Catholics. She doesn't want to be the leader of the Protestants everywhere. So this does cause her some issues. To summarise here then, why is there a decline in Anglo-Spanish relations? Well, Elizabeth is indirectly helping the Dutch. She is sending them money. She's promising military help a little later on. She is allowing Spanish colonies to be attacked by Drake. She has friendly relationships with France, and she is encouraging others to fight the Spanish in the Netherlands on her behalf. Next, we have England's direct involvement with the Netherlands, 1585 to 1588. So 1569 should be a date that's burned into your brain because it is the date of the first Catholic rebellion against Elizabeth in England. So really important date. Just like that, this one is also an important date, 1585, the Treaty of Nonsuch. So you will remember that the Treaty of Joinville kind of pushes Elizabeth to commit to direct involvement because France and Spain now have an alliance, and that puts her in an extraordinarily vulnerable position. So she finally agrees to direct involvement, much to the joy of the Privy Council, and she sends 7,400 troops with Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester. This is not going to be quite enough troops. In 1585, Drake has also been sent with the important job of disrupting the trade of the Spanish in the New World. So, Spain dominates most of the New World. They have claims in Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean, and most of South America. Also, the papacy have given their blessing that Spain are the ones that deserve to go and claim all of that land. Further to this, as Spain has dominated most of this claiming in this era, they have also put out licenses that other European powers have to request in order to set up trading posts in these areas, and the English are quite often rejected. Because we cannot do it the legal way, Drake is sent to do it the illegal way, where they are raiding any Spanish ships, and this is to disrupt Philip's flow of resources. This should damage Philip's ability to pay those Spanish soldiers in the Netherlands, and it should slow them down and give England a chance. Further, we have Dudley's actions in the Netherlands. Now, Dudley has been sent across as a general, and he has very different ideas to how things should play out in the Netherlands. Now, Dudley very strongly feels that all of the Dutch should be liberated and the Spanish should be forced to leave. Elizabeth, however, believes something completely different. Elizabeth believes that Philip has a rightful claim to the Netherlands. It is part of their empire, and as an anointed monarch, she does understand that. She respects it. She simply wants him to leave his army, so leave with his army, have them removed, so England cannot feel vulnerable. However, he enrages Elizabeth by accepting the title the Governor General of the Netherlands. Elizabeth has already previously rejected this, but Dudley accepts it. This is without Elizabeth's permission, and it puts her in a very dangerous position because it makes it look like England is now the centre of all things Protestant, and it makes Elizabeth a target. So she's furious with Dudley, and it makes tensions between England and Spain rise even further. Dudley can never really be successful in the Netherlands because he's never given quite enough money to pay his troops. He definitely doesn't have enough men, and Elizabeth is holding back because she's still hoping to negotiate with the Spanish to keep the peace. Because of this, the Dutch feel that Elizabeth isn't fully committed to helping the Protestants there. Further, Elizabeth is betrayed by a few of her army here, and in particular Captain Roland York. He gives up Zutphen Fort to the Spanish, and he jumps onto the Spanish side, on the side of the Catholics, and this humiliates England and once again makes it look like we're not fully committed. Dudley manages to redeem himself in 1587 by stopping the Spanish Duke of Parma from taking Ostend. Now, Ostend is a major deep water port in the Netherlands, and it is incredibly important that Dudley has done this. This is because it is one of the only major deep sea water ports that is close by to England. So by stopping the Spanish from having one of those, it's going to make it hard for them to launch an armada. So these huge warships need deep water ports to dock, and she's going to prevent them from having one in Europe or close by to England. Finally, we have the singeing of the king's beard. Now, this is a very important event that happens that pushes back the attack of the Spanish Armada. Drake just happens to spot Spanish ships at Cadiz, and he raids them and he sets fire to 30 ships. He manages to loot a lot of these ships as well, and on the way home stops and plunders a load of other ships too. He manages to take, now you don't strictly speaking need to know this, he finds a load of gold, spices, silk, worth £108,000 or 31 million in today's money, and 29,000 bottles of sherry are removed as well. So he comes home with lots of goodies after this one, but the damage to the ships is what's really important, because this was the Spanish Armada. These were their warships, and these were their ships with their provisions on them. Very good quality oak barrels, cannons, etc. And the damage is so severe that it delays the attack of the Spanish Armada by a year. So Drake has bought England another year, and he returns with extraordinary wealth, which obviously will please Elizabeth. (1588) then is another date that you simply have to remember, and this is the attack by the Spanish. And this is sometimes known, the attack by the Spanish Armada is sometimes known as the Enterprise of England. So what was Philip's plan? He was going to take 130 ships with about 30,000 troops. About 22 of these ships are the new galleon type ships. The troops that are on board are going to have over 2,000 guns and 118 Catholic priests. This is so they are ready to jump off of the ships and immediately help change England back to a Catholic country again. They have plenty of weapons with them, and they are the largest European fleet at this time. The fleet is going to be led by the Duke of Medina Sidonia. The Duke of Parma is waiting for him in the Netherlands, and they're going to meet up and lead the charge there. Now, the Duke of Medina Sidonia has explained to Philip that he doesn't think he's the best person for the job here. He is not that experienced. He's more of a planner and a strategist, and he even claims to Philip that he gets seasick. And again, this is going to put the English at a complete advantage, because having a seasick captain of a ship is obviously a bad thing. The plan is then they will set up the English Channel, they'll team up with the Duke of Parma in the Netherlands, they'll march on London, remove Elizabeth and restore the Catholic religion. What could possibly go wrong? Moving on to why England was able to defeat the Spanish Armada in 1588. There's a variety of things here, and they fit fairly neatly into 4 categories here. The first being technology. So Elizabeth had taken the advice of John Hawkins, who's the Treasurer of the Navy at the time, and she had invested in 24 galleons, which were a new type of warship. They were much bigger and much deeper than traditional warships, it meant that you could carry more cargo with you, which means that you can go slightly further. They are also fast and they're easy to manoeuvre, so they can turn guns on the enemy more quickly. English ships also had cannons that were mounted on smaller gun carriages. This meant that they have plenty of room to recoil once they are loaded and fired, and this means that they can be reloaded more quickly. This gave England a huge advantage because they could be reloaded more quickly. England could fire more cannonballs, and they typically were firing 6 times more cannonballs than the Spanish, so they had the advantage. Next, we have Spanish preparation and the problems relating to that. So Drake's attack on Cadiz a year earlier had left the Spanish with poor quality wood as they had rebuilt their armada. This poor quality wood, like the wooden barrels, is where they would store their food, and because the quality was not as good, the food went off more quickly. This meant there is less food and you've got hungry soldiers, and hungry soldiers don't tend to fight as well, so they were weaker. This gives England an advantage. Further, as they launched the Armada, they found themselves at sea for 10 weeks longer than they had planned. This all diminished the food resources that they already had. So it was 10 weeks of food that they hadn't accounted for. Again, this means that the soldiers are weaker, they're not going to fight as well. They are also low on cannonballs, and the ones they have aren't as good quality due to the actions of Drake. So this means that they cannot fire as many. They can't damage the English fleet as well as they might have had Drake not attacked. Further, after the battle, when they are running away from the English, they are not used to the Irish and Scottish coastlines, which can be quite treacherous. That, coupled with bad weather, meant that thousands of men were killed as they were running away from the English on the return to Spain. Next, we have problems with Spanish communication. So, the Duke of Parma did not control any deep sea ports, and you know that that is due to Robert Dudley's actions. So, he couldn't dock a large warship. This tends to mean that you leave your warship out at sea and you have to ferry provisions back on smaller boats, which takes much longer. To meet Medina Sidonia, the fleet would have to take 48 hours to get ready using these smaller boats back and forth in order to be in an advantageous position to meet Medina Sidonia. Further, the messages between Duke of Parma and Medina Sidonia were blocked by the English, who had spotted the fleet in Calais and had chased the Spanish through the English Channel, which meant that messages were severely delayed. So this meant that the night before the largest battle, Battle of Gravelines, Medina Sidonia was not able to meet up with Duke of Parma as planned, and it meant that he had to lead the fleet and he had no real experience. This put England at a massive advantage. Finally, the English ship sent fire ships the night before the Battle of Gravelines, causing the Spanish fleet to panic. Now, if you can remember, the Spanish had a tactic of fighting in a crescent formation. This was quite hard to break, and by sending the fire ships, these were just ships, old Navy ships, rotten old ships, or damaged ships, and they simply floated towards this crescent shape, and it panicked the Spanish and made them scatter. So although it doesn't cause any real damage, it meant that the big battle that takes place, Battle of Gravelines, the Spanish had got out of their formation, and it gave England an advantage. Further, as the battle's going on, the Earl of Nottingham instructs the English fleet to conserve their cannonballs for bigger battles, as he was aware that England could fire many more.